It is a great pleasure to welcome now to our show. We're going to talk about one of the iconic actors and really a famous movie and the stories behind it. And he's written a great new book called Steve McQueen, LeMans in the Rearview Mirror. And Don Nunley joined us by telephone. He was the property master on the film, and he's worked in Hollywood for a long time and has put this book together. And Don joined us by telephone today. And Don, good to talk with you. How are you?
Thank you. Very well. I'm Peter. Sorry, I just finished another interview.
Yeah, good to have a chance to chat with you for a few minutes. I'm a little bit young to have seen Steve McQueen in his prime, but I do remember seeing a lot of his movies on TV, of course, and toward the end of his career. But this movie, LeMans, was really an interesting one, not only for the fact that it was kind of one of his last big ones, but a lot of stories behind it, and it really kind of became more than a movie itself, didn't it?
It has grown in its interest, I think, in popularity over the years. When it was first released, it was a disappointment at the box office. The audiences didn't quite understand it because it was not a story-driven picture. It was a racing car-driven picture, if you can use that as a pun. But Steve wanted to make more of a documentary about racing than he did a story in a movie. And because of that, we had lots of problems throughout the production. That's not what the studio had in mind, or the director, John Sturgis, who started the film, and we butted heads until finally John Sturgis walked off the picture, and the studio took over and brought a new director in, and we then started to make more or less a coherent movie.
I guess that era, we're talking about 1969, 1970, there were a few movies made in the 60s. I think Monte Carlo was one, maybe a couple others on auto racing. That was kind of, I guess, the theme for a while, wasn't it?
Well, Grand Prix, certainly.
Grand Prix,
was
right.
A big success.
Right.
Yeah, and that was actually an extremely good film. I like it as just to sit down for entertainment value. It's a better film than ours. The racing footage in our film, I think, is unparalleled. We did stuff that had never been done before. They built camera mounts. We got actually, first time ever, they were allowed to put cameras on a race car in the film, the 24-hour race. We put 3 Airflexes on a 908 Porsche and entered it in the race and got footage that had never been seen at that time. Of course, now everybody has a GoPro on their helmet or someplace, so you see a lot of stuff that you couldn't see then.
I was going to say, by today's standards, that would say, oh, okay, I guess we could always do that. But with film cameras, that added extra problems. Loading film in there, how did you start the film to run? And you only had a certain amount, I guess, that could run in the camera. 15, 20 minutes of film, maybe even less, right? In those small cameras?
Yeah, less than that. Sure, less than that in an Airflex. They were 400-foot magazines. They were the smaller of the 35-millimeter cameras at the time. But the way we designed it, we actually put quick mounts on the cameras. We had 1 forward and 2 aft. And we made pit stops, not to change film, but to change the cameras. They'd pull the cameras off like they'd take a tire off real quick, throw another one on, and then take the cameras that were in the race back, clean them, reload them. And when they came in for another pit stop, we'd put gas in the car and tires or whatever they needed, and new camera loads. The operators, or the driver, actually triggered the cameras by switches on the steering wheel.
Okay.
And they couldn't run continuously because we didn't have that much film, but they ran when something interesting happened, or he could pass a car, or a car was passing him. So you get some great footage of the car approaching, going by, and then going by the other side. And then he was instructed, the driver, to be sure that he fell back wherever he was in the race, if he was still in the race, to go across the finish line with the winners. Obviously, he wasn't in first place. But believe it or not, the camera car was one of 17 out of 55 that finished the race. And we actually placed second in our class. So it was pretty interesting.
Before we get into some of the nuts and bolts of the movie, first of all, as I said at the top, you've been working in Hollywood for a long time. How did you get involved in this particular picture? Was it as part of the crew? You knew them before, or how did you get involved with LeMans?
Well, I had just finished a film called Little Big Man for Cinema Center Films with Dustin Hoffman and Arthur Penn directing. And they were happy with my work on that film. That was a big, big, big project. I was pretty young to do a film like that. I was just 29. And they had a production came up to me one day. I was walking across the lot. His name was Bob Rosen, and Bob said, "Would you be interested in doing the next Steve McQueen film?" Well, I thought he was kidding at first, because of course I would be interested. So I said, "Absolutely. When do I start?" He said, "Well, it's going to be called LeMans. It's a racing picture. We're going to shoot it in France." And I said, "Hold on a minute, Bob. I know nothing about that kind of racing." And bless his heart, he turned to me and said, "You'll learn." And he was right. I did learn.
And well, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, as a property master, just for people not in the movie business, you're kind of in charge of every little prop or big prop that's on a set, right? You set it up and make sure it's in the right place?
Yeah, what you're in charge of is basically everything in front of the camera, but the actors and the sets. But in a picture like this, it's all the signaling boards, it's all the tools, it's all the empty pizza boxes in the pits, it's the champagne they're drinking in the grandstands, it's the helmets, it's the wristwatches, it's lots of detail. And the film I just finished, it was a picture that basically started in 1855 and went through 1968, I believe. So a lot of period stuff in that one, we had 3 or 4 major battles, we had guns, and this picture was cars, and then learning what the cars looked like throughout the race and matching them to make sure when we were shooting, the particular hour of the race we were shooting that day matched the cars as they really looked. So it was a big challenge, especially since we never really had a working script. We shot from the seat of our pants until John Sturgis finally goes fed up and walked off the picture. And then the studio took over and brought in a new director, and we tried to shoot more or less like a real movie again.
When you first, I guess, what was the first time you met Steve McQueen? First day of shooting, was that interesting for you, or did you get to talk to him, or was he kind of doing his own thing at that time? You didn't get really interact.
Well, a prop master has very close ties with the actors. Mm-hmm. You meet with them often, you talk with them often, you make suggestions that might help their character. I usually know more about the subject than they do, and not in this case. Steve certainly knew more about racing than I did. But it's a very interesting relationship. It can be a very close relationship, or a very just business-like relationship. And with Steve, we got along fine, but I wasn't really his kind of guy. I wasn't hired by him. Studio hired me. I wasn't a motorcycle rider. So he got along great with the mechanics, and the guys who rode bikes, and the race drivers. And I got along fine with him, but I didn't hang out with him.
He was his own man. There's no doubt about that. You read stories about him. I mean, he had kind of a tough upbringing, so he's kind of an unusual type of guy. But on the screen, he had something special, didn't he?
He certainly did. He had great, normal charisma. He looked like he wasn't acting, and that's a great talent. I first met Steve about 7 years before LeMans, but it was a very brief meeting. I was working on the set dressing crew for Wanted Dead or Alive, and I was on the set, and Steve came over to where we're working, and it was more of a nod and acknowledgement than a formal introduction. But he went from Wanted Dead or Alive to become the biggest movie star in Hollywood. I went on to become a prop master. So I guess I grew in my field, he grew in his field. A lot more people knew him, and he made a little more money than me.
Well, let's get into the book a little bit, and that's really what it's kind of about, this film that had such great promise and anticipation and optimism at the beginning. As you said, as you shot it, things started to go wrong, and there were some injuries along the way. Can you tell a story or two about what happened?
Sure. First of all, I think the book hopefully will appeal to a pretty wide audience. Anybody interested in movies, anybody interested in racing, anybody interested in Steve McQueen. It's a pretty candid, behind-the-scenes look of making a major motion picture. The intrigue with the various members of the cast and crew. So I hope it appeals to a broad range of people. It seems to so far. The book is put together with over 270 of my pictures that I shot. So a lot of the pictures haven't been seen before. A lot of pictures of Steve, a lot of pictures of the race. Beautifully printed. The publisher, Dalton Watson Fine Books, did a beautiful job. I'm extremely pleased with it. Of course, it's a coffee table book. The book is 4 pounds, and it's but it's an easy read. I think everybody who has read it, not just my friends, but other people have said they found it enjoyable because they really felt they were there and participating, and that made me feel good.
Yeah, there's pictures in it, like you said, great candid behind-the-scenes shots. I love those types of books. Growing up, it really takes you to the place that they are, and that film, unfortunately, for Steve McQueen, his career kind of it didn't go away. I mean, he made some good films after that, but I guess his personal life kind of had some tough times after that, didn't it?
Well, he was going through a divorce while we were making the movie. He couldn't, like I said, come to terms with the director of the studio as to what we were shooting, so they took the project away from him. And all of his investment, everything he was going to make in that movie, basically went out the window. He found out he owed the IRS millions of dollars. What was going on in Steve's life should never go on anybody's life. And then trying to make a film at the same time was pretty stressful, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's amazing it got put together and that he finished it. He finally did what the studio asked him to do. They made a movie that was definitely interesting. The racing footage will probably never be equaled. Nowadays, when you go to a film and it's got any kind of an effect or race, it always comes out of a computer.
Right.
And to me, it looks like a cartoon. And I just love the footage in our film. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the editing on that must have taken a while, just to get all that footage together, and it really comes down to the editing room for those racing shots, right? Because you really got to get the angles right and really make it flow.
Well, we shot the race, the actual 24-hour race, with every Panavision camera available at the time. We had 26 Panavision cameras shooting the race. 3 in our car, of course, and we had cameras in helicopters, in the pits, in the grandstands, in the paddock area, everywhere you could think that we want to catch some action with all the 500,000 spectators that come to the race. We planned to do a couple of shots with Steve walking through the paddock with all the people that you would see, the celebrities and the race drivers and all the fans. And it would be perfectly normal to people to come up to a famous driver and ask him for his autograph. So if people stopped Steve and got an autograph, it would have been great. He's dressed in his pilot's uniform. He refused to do that because the studio would not let him actually drive in the race. So we missed opportunities to get shots we could have got, but then we had to restage later on.
Well, like you talk about in the book, the film did not do well initially at the box office. In recent years, Don, has it gotten a life, I guess, in video? Is it available anywhere? People can see it? Legally? Somewhere? They can see the whole movie?
Absolutely. So you can buy it. I know I bought a copy recently on Blu-ray. Beautiful reproduction. But I'm sure it's on Turner Classics. It's on, you just Google it, you'll find out when it's on next, and it'll surprise you. Might be on 2-3 times in the next couple months, because it is considered now one of the best racing films ever made. It's usually in people's top 10 lists when they talk about racing pictures. It had a life of its own. Initial release, I think it made its money back. It didn't make the kind of money they'd hoped to make because they had Steve McQueen in a racing movie. They thought it was a no-brainer. And unfortunately, the picture really is rather dull if you want to go and watch, an exciting story. So it has its moments, and it's still having its moments where some of these other films are forgotten. So I'm very proud of my work on the film. I'm really proud of the book we were able to put together, Marshall Terrell and myself. And like I said, Watson got some fine books, and it's worth a read if you can find a copy.
And sadly, even though Steve McQueen made a few movies after that, I guess Papillon was one, a couple others, but sadly he died. I believe he was only 50 years old, right, when he died of cancer, if I remember right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. He was 40 when we made the movie, and he died 10 years later of cancer. And he had some successes. He had some good films at Towering Inferno, Junior Bonner, Thomas Crown Affair. Right. But he never got to the exact point. He was still big, box office, but he never got to be number one again. And he had a sad kind of an ending to his life. It's a shame.
Yeah, I remember he had the cancer. I guess he was trying some experimental drug and stuff, but sadly it didn't work. But yeah, he left a great legacy, a really relatively short career when you think of it. I guess he started out in television, and really it was maybe a 15-year career at most. But he left a great legacy, didn't he?
He did. He left some great films behind, and after that, of course, I never saw Steve again. In the way the film business works, you work with somebody very closely for 6 or 8 or 10 months, and then you go your separate ways. And the likelihood of working together again in Hollywood, it wasn't very strong. I did several films with Gene Wilder, which was delightful. I did several films with Simon. He was delightful. But I didn't work with most actors more than once.
Do you still work on, or are you taking the life of leisure?
I got out of Dodge several years ago.
Well, it's a hectic lifestyle doing that type of work. I'm sure it's rewarding, but it's not the traditional 9 to 5, is it? You're working a lot of hours.
Oh, it is. You're right. The hours were probably the worst thing about the business. An average day was 12 hours, and the normal day was 14 hours. You put a lot of hours in every week. But it was always exciting to go to work. It was always a challenge. And every film was totally different than the one before. You were always learning. And that I really appreciate. I don't know how I would have done in other industries. This one kept me on my toes, and I really enjoyed it.
And what's great about that, your work lasts forever. It's either on TV or Netflix or online or on a video disc somewhere. So that's good, too. You can go back and look at it every once in a while.
That, and now a book.
And a great book called Steve McQueen, LeMans in the Rearview Mirror. And we've been talking with Don Nunley, who is the property manager on the film. And again, as you said, it's published by Dalton Watson Books. I guess just go to daltonwatson.com. Available everywhere else, I believe. All the bookstores have it, Don?
Well, I'm not sure. I know that right now the website, publisher's website is the best place. They might have it on Amazon, but it probably have to be ordered on Amazon. They wouldn't be able to ship it out overnight.
So we'll recommend go to daltonwatson.com. We'll also post it on our website as well. But Don, Nunley, pleasure talking to you. Really great to chat with you and all about the movie business and, of course, the great Steve McQueen. And hopefully we can talk to you again, but really appreciate talking to you today. Thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best with your show.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or DougMilesMedia.com.